Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Profile T1 webinar. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes, just checking on a few things. In the meantime, if you want to use the chat window, you should see a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you want to click on that and tell us where you're from, say hello, maybe tell us how long you've been a Profile user. It'd be interesting to see some of your comments. As I say, I'm just going to turn my video off again, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're just going to get started pretty soon, just making sure I've got everything I need to get going. So give us a couple of minutes and we'll be right back.
Try to lie, then do it on me. Want all of your bad on me. Don't know I need your energy. I just need something bad for me. All your good is good enough. All your good is good enough. Yeah. Too much good is enough. For me, for me, for me.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started. I am just going to take over the screen share. So give me a second here and make sure that I share the right screen. Last time I did this, I wasn't sharing the right screen. So I want to make sure we're doing this right. So give me a second here. I think this is the one I want. Let's find out. So you should see actually Profile right now. Let me go over to my slide deck. And so you should essentially see the same screen that we had seen when you first came in. Let me just quickly turn my video back on just to say hello and welcome one and all for being here with us today. Great to have you here. We've got almost 200 people on the call today. We're probably going to see a few more coming in during the course of the first few minutes of our webinar. So welcome one and all. Great to have you here. Let me just very quickly start with some introductions. If we haven't met before, my name is Michael Delaro. Had my own CPA practice for a long time. I'm sure some of you have already heard this spiel before, so apologies if you hear the same story repeatedly. But I just wanted to point out that, yes, I did have my own practice. I did many, many years of tax work, T1, T2, T3s and all that stuff. And so I know what it's like. I know what the pressure of tax season, especially, T1 season can be like. And, maybe we don't say it often enough, but everybody sure is grateful to have folk like you doing what you do, because it ain't easy work, is it? It can be some pretty hectic and stressful periods for us. So thank you for taking the time. I know tax season isn't quite here yet. We're getting close though. With everything we have to do to get ready. Maybe some of you do T4s and all that fun stuff. So once again, thank you so much for being here. I have to point out that I am not alone on this webinar. There's a whole team of people who are working mostly behind the scenes. I'm going to very quickly introduce Miriam Kusa, who is in the background. Miriam is just going to, at the end of our webinar today, have just a few little words to say towards the end of the webinar. We also have, Miriam is with Intuit. Miriam's the lady who just put everything together, made sure that all the pieces were in place so that we could get this webinar off the ground. So thank you so much, Miriam, for all of your work and effort. We have Julie Lachance, who's here, and Duncan Robinson, both are care reps with ProFile. They're the real experts. They're the ones who know ProFile inside out, and they're here to answer your questions. Speaking of questions, I should quickly point out that there are two icons. I'm sure you've seen them. One's for chat, one's for Q&A. So chat, as the name implies, is, if you want to chat back and forth, which is, what I've seen some people putting in a few comments about where they're from and how many years of experience people have with ProFile. It looks as though we've got just about the whole country covered, all the way from Newfoundland all the way up to British Columbia, and just about so many points in between. I think from what I've seen very quickly, I think we've got every province represented in this country. So thank you one and all for letting me know where you're from. We also have a wide range of experienced individuals. We have people who are relatively new or brand new to ProFile, and we've got some people who've been here for or have been using ProFile for 10 years or more. So thank you for being here. Now, for those long-term users, people who have been using ProFile for a while, we're going to be starting at the very beginning. So we're going to be showing you stuff that potentially you already know. Please be patient as we go through the deck and the demos that we're going to be doing. Hopefully, by the end of the webinar, we'll have been able to show you something that you didn't know, and maybe we can give you a few tidbits to make your tax season more easy. Can I say that? Easier? It's the first webinar back since after the holidays. It's first ProFile webinar since after the holidays. So I'm still trying to remember what I'm supposed to talk about, I guess. But anyway, who did I forget? Oh, we have Thomas, who's here. Thomas is the guru. He's the Zoom guy. He's the guy who's making sure that Zoom works the way it should. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Julie and Duncan, for being here today. They're working in the background to answer your questions. And I don't even think I finished that thing about the chat and Q&A. So chat will be disabled at some point because Miriam's got some links that she wants to share with you. We do have a training guide, PDF of a training guide, a PDF even of a homework assignment that I'll explain a little bit later. And so Miriam's going to put, in case you didn't get them when you got your confirmation when you registered for our webinar today, in case you didn't get those links or maybe didn't notice those links, Miriam's going to put them in the chat panel. So please use Q&A for your questions. Okay, chat is just to, and chat will be enabled later on. Right now, as I say, we just want to, it's going to be closed if it already isn't closed, so that Miriam could give you access to download some of those documents that we want to share with you. And please use Q&A for asking your questions. and Julie or Duncan or Miriam as well are there to answer any questions you may have about ProFile or about other webinars that we've got lined up. All right, let's get going. Who is this session for? Well, as the name implies, it is for new users, for recent users, for people who are kind of getting their feet wet with ProFile and want to get up to speed as quickly as possible, learn the basics at least, how do I work in this thing? What do I need to know? Hopefully that's what we're going to be showing you today. We're going to be showing you some of the key functionality, some of the key things you really need to know, especially as a new user. And as I said, even for the experienced folk, people who've been here for a while or been using ProFile for a while, hopefully we'll be able to show you a few tips. I'm going to disable my camera because it takes up bandwidth. And so I want to reserve as much bandwidth as I can to the webinar and to Zoom and ProFile and all that. So that's why I disabled the camera. And yeah, so there you go. There's who we're targeting this webinar at. And something else that we wanted to point out is some of our objectives for today. We'll start by talking about the benefits of using ProFile, how to get help. We all need resources. And so we're going to show you a whole host of resources available of all the different ways in which you can get your questions answered. You can learn about new features. You could network with your peers, and we're going to show you all that in a few slides. Of course, we're also going to show you some of the essential setup options, some of the things that you really need to do or need to know about when you start using ProFile, and that applies, give or take, at the beginning of every year too, because we update every year, right? We get the newest version of ProFile usually around this time of year, and so there are some things that you still need to look at the start of every year. So we'll talk about that. Of course, navigating in ProFile, we're going to show you a few little tips and tricks, including some shortcuts. And one of the goals that we do have is how can we become more efficient? What tools can we use to make things easier for ourselves? And we're going to hopefully be able to give you a few tips along those lines. And last but not least, as I pointed out, there is a test drive. If you're brand new to ProFile, you want to see, how do I work this thing? How do I, can I try can I do a trial run? We actually have a fictitious tax return that you could, just a few little things that you could try working on, and then we can discuss them. So the last half hour of our webinar, I'm in the eastern part of the country. I'm in Ottawa right now, and so it's 12:45 our time. Our webinar runs till 3:30. But we are really going to stop the demos and the instructional side of our webinar around 3 p.m. Give you a chance to work on that homework assignment if you feel like it, and then as well in that last half hour, I'm going to open the Q&A window and have a look at comments and questions, and very possibly. Some of the rest of the team is going to open up their microphones too. I know Duncan every once in a while comes in with some key insights. So always a pleasure to have Duncan's comments. And as I said, Miriam as well will be joining us when she'll open up her mic towards the end of our webinar. Okay, let's point out something crucially important as well. Something that we point out every webinar. This is software training. It is not tax training. I actually got an email. I should tell you this. I actually got an email a little while ago, just before the holidays. I also do QuickBooks training. So we were doing a QuickBooks webinar in December, and I don't know. I can't remember how it came up, but somehow ProFile got mentioned in that webinar, and so there was someone who was on that QuickBooks webinar who sent me a message in the Q&A saying, do you do private training? Can you teach me how to and my team to use ProFile? And I said, well, I don't really do that, but I know someone who might. And then I asked, well, what is it that you need to know? Because we have ProFile webinars. And she said, well, yeah, I took those webinars, but it didn't give me the information I needed. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What did you need to know? She said, well, I want my team to learn how to prepare a tax return. And so this is what I'm getting at. We're not here to show people how to do taxes. We're here to show you how to use the software in order to prepare those tax returns. So obviously, you know, one of the understandings is that you're tax experts, or you're tax professionals, maybe that's the better term. And we're not here to answer tax questions. We're not here to teach you how to prepare a tax return. I really have to point out, I am not a tax expert. When I had my practice, I was a generalist. I did, you know, the basic stuff that most people needed to get done. There's a lot of high level stuff that I would not do. And I never, ever considered myself a high level tax expert. As a matter of fact, there were two people that I used to lean on when I needed more information, or oftentimes I just give them the work because it was above my level of expertise. And so, yes, we're here to answer your software questions. How do I do this in ProFile? I'm having an issue and I'm not sure, am I doing it right? Absolutely, more than happy to do that. But what we cannot do is answer questions like, well, I have a client who has this situation and I don't know if, can I include that on their tax return or not? I'm sorry, we just can't answer those questions. As you know, tax is opinion more often than not. And so we just can't give tax opinion during this webinar today, nor am I even, qualified to be a tax guru or high-level tax practitioner. Okay, let's get back to ProFile. So why ProFile? Well, as I pointed out on our when I was talking about the comments that people were sending to us through the chat panel, and we have people who've been using ProFile for a few months, and other people have been using ProFile for at least 10 years, and a lot of long-time users. I'm one of them. I'm someone who's been using ProFile for I don't know, maybe 20 years or so. And why did we stick with it? Well, there's some of the reasons that you can see on the screen why many of us are sticking with ProFile. First of all, that first word up at the top of the screen, Maui, as much as it sounds like it's a place we'd like to be, especially with the winter that we've got here, Maui actually means in a profile context, multiple application user interface. And what that means is it works the same way no matter where you are. Are you working on a T1? Are you working on a T2? Are you working on a 2021 T1 or a 2019 T1? It works the same way. The learning curve is not steep, and you don't always have to relearn it if you're going from T1 to T2. It works the same way. And all of those modules and all of those years are in one window. And so the software I used to use before using ProFile, every tax year was a different version of the software. So if you're working on 3 tax returns for someone, 3 years of tax returns, you have to open up a different version every time. It was very inefficient. And that was the first thing that struck me with ProFile was how clean and easy it was to learn. There's also an extensive auditor. We're going to talk about the auditor, but let's just summarize it by saying there's over 2,800 diagnostic checks that auditor can go through to give us advice, to point out something we may have missed, something that is incorrect, as easy as a wrong social insurance number, for example, or the wrong amount on a T4, the CPP amount is not what the amount should be. It'll give us all of that kind of advice. Of course, there's all kinds of help, and we're going to show you all the ways in which you can access those help resources in another couple of slides. It's customizable. You could tweak it, you could personalize it. And we're going to show you today, and also in our next webinar, in our advanced or experienced user webinar, all the ways, not all, because there's so many different ways, but some of the key ways in which you can personalize Profile. More and more, we're seeing online tools, and that applies as well in Profile. We're going to show you a couple of those today. And if you have a client who's on QuickBooks, Profile does work with QuickBooks, mostly on the T2 side of things. It's actually, again, what we want is that we want to be efficient. We want to save as much time as we can when we're working on all these tax returns. And anything, any little tool, any little resource we could tap into to save us some time and make ourselves more efficient is greatly appreciated. And that's hopefully what we're going to show you today. So some key features. Of course, you could carry forward files from last year to this year, but you can also carry forward competing software files. So if you had someone, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but every once in a while I have someone who came and said, hey, I've got a, you know, I knew I need my tax return done. I was using someone else last time, and I've got the software. I'm sorry, I've got the data file from last year, and maybe I could give it to you. And it's, well, okay, but I don't use that software, but I could still carry it forward into Profile. So it will carry forward competing software products. Of course, all scenarios, all provinces, whether you're in Newfoundland, British Columbia, any point in between or north, Profile can handle it. T1, T2, T3, and also don't forget there's the FX module, the forms module that you can prepare T4s and T5s and all kinds of stuff. Of course, a Profile is capable to use CRA's autofill my return feature. We're going to show you that towards the end of our webinar, how to use autofill my return. I hope most of you are using autofill. I was a big fan, still am a big fan, still use it. I still do a more limited number of returns, maybe 15 to 20 returns every year, some T2s as well. And so autofill my return is for me another resource that could save us all kinds of time. Online backup is available, so you could actually back up your files to Profile's computers and just have that extra level of guarantee and assurance that you're not going to lose any data. Nobody wants to lose any data, and so you could make yourself available, or you can use Profile's software. Just take advantage of that service where you could actually back up your files remotely. And it is proven, it's reliable, it's guaranteed. And I'm just going to very quickly point out that one of the things that I've learned twice, it happened to me twice, and one of them was with my tax software. Before using Profile, I was using something else, and they disappeared. The vendor just decided that they weren't going to continue. They sold to someone else, and all of a sudden, you know, the software you've been using for the last 2 or 3 years disappeared. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. It's not pleasant, and it happened to me twice in my career. Another one was with some accounting software that we were supporting back then. And when that happens, it's not a pleasant feeling. So what you want is someone who's going to be there in the long term. So you want to work with an organization that's proven, that's reliable, that you know is going to be there providing that level of support that you need to get through tax season. And the guaranteed part, actually, if you go to Profile's website, you'll see that they do have a T1 accuracy guarantee. If Profile makes a calculation error, as it says on the screen, Intuit will reimburse you for interest on any CRA reassessment. So, you know, let's call it an example of putting your money where your mouth is. And so kind of gives you a comforting feeling, at least it did for me, knowing that you're partnering with an organization that's going to be there in the long run. Hey, what about getting help? Everybody needs help, especially at the height of tax season. We're crazy busy. We're trying to do something and we just can't get it to work. There's something going on. It won't work. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And we need to reach out. Well, how can we reach out? What avenues do we have? As you can see on the screen, good old-fashioned phone support is there. Yes, you could pick up the phone and call care, and people like Julie and Duncan, who are on our call today, will be more than happy to help you with whatever your issue is. There's also live chat. You can enable a chat session while you're working in ProFile. You could launch a chat session. So let me show you what I mean. If you go, oops, hang on a second, up my Zoom control bar, my little Zoom panel that's blocking some of my menus. Give me a second here. Apologies for the pause. I just want to move a window around. So right up here, you see my icon bar. I've actually zoomed in on some of these icons. I've actually kind of changed some of the font sizes and some of the graphic sizes. Some of them look a little bit on the large side, so my icons might look a little bit on the large size. But notice right over here, you have a chat icon. You can launch a chat session with care, with the ProFile care representatives. And you can, as you're working in ProFile, communicate back and forth via chat. And let's go back to our slide deck. There's, of course, in-product help. Here's an example of what that help window looks like. So you can scroll through the contents, go into the index, or use the search to type in a search term and look for some help right from inside the product. There's all kinds of online resources available to you. So if you want to access some of those resources, I'm going to show you in the next few slides a couple of examples of those resources. Of course, they're web-based, and you can get all kinds of information. Let me just move up the slide. So there is an online community. So there's a ProFile tax community that you could have access to, and you could read some of the comments. You can ask a question. You could answer a question. You could network with your peers from this website, and you could kind of, just like I say, you can just network and get to know other people who are doing the same type of work as you are. So that ProFile tax community is there 24/7 for you to access online. And then my favorite resource has always been the webinars and the videos. I've always loved, especially the videos, because first of all, you can access them at your own leisure, at your own pace, your own rhythm. And I like the videos because I could pause them. I could try doing something that, I'm trying to learn how to use something in ProFile, and I'm watching the video, and then I could pause it and go back to ProFile and try it myself. Oh, it's not working. Go back to the video and see what I did wrong. And the videos, there's such a gamut of topics, everything from how to install ProFile to really advanced stuff like how to use Client Explorer. And in our webinar next week, we're going to actually walk you through Client Explorer. So there's all kinds of really, really interesting topics that you could access via those videos. So let me go back to ProFile here, and let me just show you how you access some of these resources. So you would think the help menu is where you want to go. And so, yes, of course, you could click on the help menu and you could go to ProFile help. You can get the in-product help as we showed you on that screenshot. There's a user guide you could download. Okay, you can download a PDF of the user guide. And then it looks as though the rest of this is not really help related. We've got licensing menus here, and then messages and things of that nature. But there are other menus that I wanted to point out. So notice there's a training menu here. So if you click on training, you will actually be able to open up a tutorial. There's all kinds of tutorials available to you that you could walk through. Maybe it's a 2022 T1 you want to learn how to prepare. Or maybe you hired someone on your team, it's a brand new employee who's starting to work with you, and you want them to get up to speed on ProFile. And therefore, you could point them out these tutorials that they can access in order to learn how to use ProFile. Down here is other training options. So if you click on other training options, you're going to be brought to the website, and you will see a lot of those resources that we were talking about on how to use ProFile. And seems to be a little bit slow, my browser today, but there we go. So notice that we've got the user guide that we've talked about. And then if we keep going down, there's the videos we were talking about. And there's a whole bunch of other resources, including those tutorials and so on and so forth. And so all you have to do to access all those online resources, therefore, is go to the training menu and select other training options, okay? Or if you want, either for yourself or for a member of your team, to use a tutorial, well, they're all right over here. And then we could even go to the online menu, okay? And we could get all kinds of information from here as well. Under update information, we could learn what's new. So we could find out what's new with the latest version of ProFile, what's fixed, are there any known issues, and so on and so forth. So good idea to not just stick to the help menu. Don't forget to explore what's available in these other menus, especially training and online. Okay, so some really key resources there available to you. Okay, let's go back to our slideshow and let's talk about some key settings. As I said at the very beginning, there are some key settings, there's some key information that we really need to be, or at least to know how to put into ProFile. And that's what we're going to show you right now. It's just a few key settings to get you started. There's a whole bunch of ways in which you can personalize and tweak ProFile. We're going to show you some today. We're going to show you some more next week in our experienced user webinar. But right now, we're going to show you some of the crucial ones, the obligatory ones, if you will, to get you started. And there's three that we're going to start with. The e-file options. Of course, as tax professionals, we e-file, right? We certainly don't paper file, don't net file. We e-file our clients' tax returns. And so I'm going to show you how to enter all of those e-file options. It's so easy. It's a real cakewalk. So we're going to show you that. That's one of the options that you need to know. Of course, your preparer settings, the name of your firm, your own name, your address, and all that kind of stuff. We'll show you how to put all that into ProFile. And then we're going to walk you through some file settings. When we say file settings, what we're describing is file location. Have you ever given it some thought? Where are your files being stored? Where is ProFile saving your files? And you could tweak that. You could tell ProFile where to save all your tax files. And that's what we're talking about when we say file settings. So let's go over to ProFile. Let's start with e-file. Easy as pie. Click on the e-file menu, go down to options, and then right over here at the bottom, you'll see it says T1 TP1 Wizard. Click on that, and just follow that through. It's a bit small, that window, so let me just describe it to you. All you're going to be asked for is your CRA credentials. So when you register as an e-file practitioner, if you will, or e-file provider, and you probably renewed that e-file license fairly recently, because we have to renew it every year, you were probably given a new password. Your e-file number is probably the same, and your e-file password does renew every year. And so you need to put that information in there. Okay, so put in your e-file number, put in your password as given to you by CRA, click next. And then if you work on Quebec tax returns, you can put your Quebec credentials in there, and then you're done. You just finish and that's it. It doesn't really need that much information for you to enable e-filing with ProFile. The next one we were talking about are your preparer settings. So you'd want to tell ProFile what the name of your firm is, what your phone number, address, and all that stuff is. And maybe you're thinking, why? Why do we need to put that in there? Well, there's, client communication being one reason why, and we're going to show you a little bit later some client communication tools. And you want the name of your firm, your own name maybe, and your address, maybe phone number, and all that stuff. And so let's show you how to do that. Let's go to the options menu, and let's go to environment. And when that window opens up, all we have to do is go to preparer. And here's where you put in, if you're a sole practitioner, just put in your name. If you're working in a firm, then put in your firm name, put in your street address, and anything else you want to put in there, you put in your email address. And you can even put in your initials, because ProFile actually keeps track of who worked on a tax return. So with the initials, you could see who was the last person to work on a tax return. And then down here, we have your CRA or Revenue Quebec credentials. Now, these are different credentials, all right? We talked about your e-file credentials. Now what we're talking about is your represent a client credentials. And so what that means is, with represent a client, you could actually go to CRA's website or Revenue Quebec's website. Now, I don't do Quebec returns, so I'm just kind of guessing it works pretty much the same way. But nonetheless, you could go to, let's stick with CRA, what I know. You can go to CRA's website and you can download information directly from CRA's website, or you could view information. I don't know if it's happened to you. It's certainly happened to me. I don't know how many times where I'd ask my client for their notice of assessment, and of course they don't know what that is, or they can't find it. This is not something that's front of mind to the average individual keeping track of where they put their notice of assessment. And so you could save yourself all that bother by just going to CRA's website and viewing or downloading the notice of assessment directly from their website. And so this is where you could put in your represented client data. And of course, you need to register as an authorized representative with CRA for that client. And so the information you put here is going to allow you to e-file the authorization requests. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. All right, let's click on OK. And oh, there's one more that I forgot to mention. Let's talk about those file options. So let's go back to options. Let's go to environment, and let's click on the file menu. And so what we've got here is down over here, we've got every tax module and tax year. So notice for T1s, we've got every tax year, 2020, starting with 2022, going all the way back. It goes back about 12 years. And after that, we've got your T2 settings or your T2 file location, your T3 file location, And then if we keep going down, you're going to see your FX file location. So if you have every module, that's what you'll see. Okay. And what this tells us is where ProFile saves those files. Now, by default, ProFile, as you can see, puts your files in a documents, my profile data, and then for T1s anyway, an individual folder for each tax year. So my 2022 T1s are going to go into this folder. My 2021 T1s are going to go into this folder, and so on and so forth. Okay, so by default, ProFile will pick all of those for you. Now, you may not want ProFile to save those files there. Maybe you're working in a network environment. You've got 2 or 3 or more practitioners. You're all working on tax returns. Maybe you have a server in your office and you want to save the files on the server. So you'll want to tell ProFile where you want those files saved. Okay. And the other thing that I want to point out is you see this little column that says lock. What this does is it locks that location down. Okay, if you want your files to be saved in this folder or whatever folder you designate on that line, if you lock it, so if you click the lock checkbox, you're telling ProFile, don't ever change that file location. Okay, as a matter of fact, just a couple of months ago, I was working on a 2022 forecast. It was a very preliminary forecast. I mean, ProFile is not 100% CRA, but they didn't have all of the 2022 tax forms yet. So nonetheless, it was a very preliminary forecast that I was working on. And what I did is I took a 2021 return, carried it forward to 2022. And because it was temporary, I saved it on my desktop. Okay. And so to open that 2022 file, I just went to the desktop, clicked on the file name, and ProFile opened that file. All right. Easy enough, right? Now, I've forgotten to lock that location for 2022 T1. Okay. And so what happened is because I opened the file from the desktop, I did not check the lock button. And I then saved the file back to the desktop. The next time I went to open a 2022 tax return or create a 2022 tax return, where did ProFile want to save that file? Or where did ProFile search for that file? On the desktop, because that was the last location I had used. So ProFile will change that location based on the last setting, the last location you use for a particular module or year. And if you lock it, then you won't have that issue. Okay. All right, let's click OK on this as well. And let's go back to our deck and let's show you a few other settings that you might find very informative. So the form selection setting. Now, everybody has their own policy when it comes to providing a copy of the tax return to their clients. We're all over the map. I'm sure if we polled everybody in our webinar today, we'd have who knows how many different answers. Some people will print the full jacket, all of the schedules, all of the forms, and give a hard copy to their clients. Others will print a summary with a few key forms. Others will print absolutely nothing and just give their clients a PDF, either the full package or just a summary. We're all over the map, right? Whatever it is that you decide on giving to your client, you could tell ProFile what that decision was. You could come into the form selection menu, all right? And from here, you could pick and choose what it is you want to give your client. Notice there are 3 columns: file, client, CRA. You could check or uncheck each of these columns. Notice it says print these sets. And so if you actually want to create a hard copy, you could click that first line for maybe just a client copy. All right, you say, okay, I'm going to give a hard copy to the client, and you could uncheck file and uncheck CRA. You don't want to print a hard copy of anything for the file or the CRA copies. You could also go to the second line that says archive these sets, and archive means create a PDF. So if you're not giving a hard copy to your clients, you could uncheck that first line, and you don't give them anything hard copy, you give them a PDF of their return. So you select under the client column, you select archive, okay? And then you've got other settings down here. Do you want to create duplex, 4 per page, and so on and so forth. You can even set automatically the language to print the tax return. I don't know about you, but we had some clients that a married couple or a couple living common law, and one of the two partners wanted their return in English, the other one wanted it in French, and I would always forget, either give them both in English, both in French, or give the wrong version to the wrong person, until I discovered that I could click the language drop down here, and I could tell ProFile, print the return or prepare the return, the copy of the return, in the language of correspondence. So if we put in English as the language of correspondence on the T1, then they would get their copy in English. If we put French, then they would get their copy in French. One less headache, one less thing to worry about. And the other thing I should point out is this is all dependent on module and tax year. Notice what we're working on. We're working right now on 2022 T1. Okay, so this is for the 2022 T1s. And we even have jobs. We're actually at T1 paper right now. So let me just go over to ProFile and show you that if you go to options and then select form selection, what you want to do is you want to select either paper or e-file print job. So obviously we don't paper file very much. So you're going to want to change that to T1 e-file. Okay, select T1 e-file, and then don't forget to select your module and tax year. So I'm at 2021 right now. So you might want to switch that to 2022. Okay, and then select T1 e-file. And then select the columns. And notice over here, all I've got is archive client. So I'm telling ProFile, I just want to have a PDF that I'm going to make available to the client. And then the rest of this is just checking the lines for what I want to give them. Okay. You could right click and you could say clear all or select all. All right. So I could click clear all and then start checking what I want to give them for each of those lines, or I could just go back to the defaults if I want to, okay? And so that's how you tell ProFile how you have, or what you've decided when it comes to giving the forms to your client. Okay, let's go back to our slide deck and let's talk about some PDF options. Because,
hi, Mike.
Hey, Duncan, how are you?
Not too bad, Mike.
Good.
Can you go back to the print screen for a second? Because we had a question. I want to make a comment here.
Is this okay? Or
yeah, that's great.
okay.
So
okay.
You did point out that you can uncheck file, client, and CRA, and this is probably one of the things that people should do before they start filing returns, because we do get calls where people say it's printing 80 pages. A lot of them are duplicate. I don't need all these. So this is a great thing to check when you start. What sets will you need? Because if you just go to file print, these sets will print because they are selected to print.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Duncan.
The other thing is to check the, I might have missed this answering the question, but the print job up at the left. Yeah, you have to set it for each job. So I might have missed you mentioning that you can set it to T1 paper.
Yeah. It's good. It's worth repeating because I think that's one of the things we miss. Let me go back into ProFile itself. One of the things we miss is that, you know, we're so focused on, whoops, I'm in the wrong place. Hang on a sec. So what we're so focused on this part of the screen, file client CRA, that as you pointed out, we don't notice that we're actually in T1 paper. So very important to make sure we've got the right print job selected and also the right module. Make sure that you're in the tax year and the module that you want to be working in. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Duncan.
the other thing, Michael, I want to mention, we just got a question about this and see this a lot, is you know, people go down under the find forms and, you know, to select the individual forms, and
Yeah,
they uncheck everything. So I won't need this, won't need that, won't need
right.
the
Yeah,
Alberta credits because I'm in
yeah,
Ontario.
yeah.
And you don't have to do that, because if the if you're not in Alberta and you're filing a return for Ontario, this isn't going to print.
Right, right.
So that's what a lot of people seem to think is, if I'm going to print client, it's going to print all these forms for every return, and that's not true.
Yes, yes, good point. And thank you for pointing that out, because definitely, just because you've highlighted some of these lines, some of these forms, if they don't apply for that client, then profile won't print. I mean, if you've selected T2125, you want to give a copy of the T2125 to your client that's self-employed. Well, it doesn't mean it's going to print the T2125 for everybody. You know, even if, you know, the ones that aren't self-employed, there is no T2125. So ProFile is smart enough to know that we're only going to print the forms that apply and that you've selected that you want to provide. So yeah, thank you for that. That's this is a very powerful tool, and I think it's one that, you know, really does, you know, does bear, you know, drilling down and getting into detail with, because this, again, you know, I mean, it could save us all kinds of time. We said it once at the very beginning, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. You know, ProFile does the, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Michael. It does give you a lot of options. So it seems to be too confusing for a lot of people, but once you see what the options are, you go, oh, actually, this is quite powerful, like you say. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting, but
no, never apologize. Your input, your insights is extremely appreciated, and yeah, sometimes I forget to point things out. So no, it's good. It's good that we kind of elaborate on that, because again, a massive time saver, massive time saver. All right, so let's go back to our slide deck and let's talk about PDF, because that's another thing that, as Duncan pointed out, when you're here and you're telling ProFile what you want to give to your client, if you've selected archive, okay, so let me see if I could explain this and make it clear, because I don't want to, I just want to make sure that this is understood. It's important. If you uncheck print these sets, you don't want to print anything. You've decided you're giving no hard copy to your client. So you uncheck print these sets, you check archive under the client column. So you're going to give your client a PDF of their tax return, okay? When you go, let me go back to ProFile here. Because you've selected archive, when you go and click on File, Print, okay? Nothing's going to print, because you've unchecked. In the previous window, you said you don't want to print anything, you want to archive. So when you click File, Print, ProFile is actually going to create a PDF of that return for the client, okay? You don't have to worry that it's going to print something. It's not going to print anything because you've unchecked it in the form selection window. And so then the next thing is if once you click File, Print, the question becomes, where is ProFile going to send that PDF file? Where is ProFile going to save that PDF file? What is ProFile going to name that PDF file? Well, once again, you have the power, if you will, to designate all that. You could go to the PDF tab of the Environment Options window, and I'll show it to you in ProFile. I just wanted to show it to you here in the slide deck. You can, from here, do all kinds of stuff, including setting the naming convention. What do you want ProFile to name the file? So you could do something like, I want it to, the PDF, I want it to be named the client's last name, the year, and the type of tax returns. So 2021 T1 for Johnson. Okay, so you could do that and ProFile will automatically apply those settings in naming the file. You could also tell ProFile down over here, let me just get my laser pointer, it might be easier. So right down over here, you could tell ProFile where you want those files, those PDFs saved. By default, ProFile will save them with the tax file. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. Personally, I want my tax files saved separately from my PDFs, okay? So that was just me. I want my PDF in their own designated folder. And so you could set the folders for all of your PDFs, where you want ProFile to save, how you want it saved, in other words, how to name that PDF. And finally, do you want passwords applied to those PDFs? And you could do all of that. Now, let me show you in ProFile where that is. All we have to do is go back to the options menu, and maybe you're starting to get the indication of how powerful that options menu is and how much we could tweak and personalize ProFile. So we'll go to options, environment, and once again, now you may have to scroll because we're not seeing the PDF tab up here. So use the little arrow keys on the right-hand side and scroll, and there's PDF, okay? And now from here, I could set my PDF naming convention, my PDF locations, and whether or not I want ProFile to apply a password to those PDF files. All of that could be done from this window. So again, another way in which we can become more efficient and just save ourselves some time, okay? So there you go, just a few settings that we wanted to point out to take 10, 15 minutes, whatever the case may be at the very beginning. And then it's going to save you all kinds of time as you start working on those tax returns. Okay, let's go back to our slide deck. Let's talk about, again, this is for the new users, for people who are recent users, just getting started with ProFile maybe. Let's talk about how ProFile actually works. So we're going to talk about how to get started. We're going to talk about the various forms and schedules that are available, how you access them. We're going to talk about, you don't really enter any information on the T1 jacket itself. You don't put any information on the T1 return. Everything gets put on supporting or ancillary schedules and forms. And then we're going to talk about these yellow fields, okay? So quite a bit we're going to cover in this particular module of our webinar. And so the first thing we should point out is Form Explorer. So we said, you don't put information on the T1 return itself. So if I'm working on a T1, so I've got a T1 open here. And here I am on the T1, okay? So there's a typical T1, you can see what it looks like. And by the way, when we get into the nitty-gritty of actually showing you how to enter information, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to fill my screen with a tax return. So you should see it better. But for now, I just want you to kind of get an overview level of what ProFile looks like. And so what you can see here is the T1 jacket, right? There's my T1 and all the pages in the T1. So we said we don't put information on that T1. So what we need to do is we need to open up all the supporting forms and schedules. And that's where the Form Explorer comes in handy. So Form Explorer can be accessed from the menu bar. Okay, we could just click on the menu bar and find the Form Explorer icon. It's right over here. Okay, or as you'll learn with very quickly, just hit the F4 key on your keyboard, and there's my Form Explorer. Okay, so Form Explorer is where I can go and find and then open whatever forms I need to use. So notice over here, there's a field that's called form. So let's say I want to go to the T4 entry window. So I just type in T4 and there you go. I'm at the T4 window. Click or press F4 again. And let's pretend I have to record a T5. I type in T5 and there you go. I'm at T5 now. All right. So the Form Explorer is pretty easy to use. I just type in the name of the form I want to open. And notice that it gives me all kinds of information, the name of the form, what type of form it is in the second column, full description. And then it even tells me things like, have you used it yet in this tax return? Did you use it last year? And there's even a step that says, here's the steps for the usage of your Form Explorer. And so the key thing being, you have to type in the name of the form, right? So T4, T5, and then maybe some other forms might not be as logical. Like if you want to put in dependent information, well, there's a form that's called dependent, and then you type in DEP, and that's going to open up the dependent information. But sometimes you may not know the name of the form. What's the medical expense form called? What's the tuition form called? And, you know, some of these forms, like for example, the tuition, you have to type in T2202. And if you don't know that, then you're thinking, well, I can't find my form. So there are icons on the right-hand side, at the top right-hand side of this Form Explorer window, one of them being a keyword icon. So if you're not sure what form you're looking for, what you could do is do a keyword search. So now I'm on the keyword icon and I've got a search field right over here. And if I type in tuition, I'm going to see all of the potential forms that have anything to do with tuition. And there's T2202. And I say, oh yeah, that's the one I need. And now I could click on it and open it. Okay. So by default, you're going to be on the detail icon here on the top right, where it's assumed you know the name of the form that you want to open. If you don't know the name of the form, go to the keyword icon. Or if you're the kind of person who knows all the line numbers, you could even go to the line number icon, and then you could search by line number. Okay. Now, I don't know the line numbers by heart. Maybe some of you do. And if you prefer to work that way, not a problem. You could do that. Okay. So Form Explorer is something you're going to use repeatedly, not only obviously during the tax year, but even on one individual return, you're constantly going to be opening up Form Explorer. And that's how we essentially jump to all the various forms that we need. And notice as we open a form, we have tabs that get filled at the top of the tax return. So I've got some dependent form, I've got the T5 form, I've got the T4 form, and so on and so forth, all of which I've opened with Form Explorer. Okay, let's go back to our slide deck, and just a little tip for some of you who like to see which forms, not forms, I'm sorry, which tax returns did you recently work on? Well, you could see some really key information, including the tax returns you recently worked on, by using the ProFile Quick Start window. So let me show you how you get to it. So when you're in ProFile, go up to the Help menu and select Quick Start. And there's the window that opens up. And what you see from here is the recent files, okay? And so you can see all of the recent files that you've worked on. You could also quickly carry forward, create, or open another file. Okay, so if you don't see the file you recently worked on in this list, you could just say open an existing file. You could create a new file. You could carry forward a file. And from here, you could also just quickly switch modules, and you could even access resources and other information. So I'm a big fan of this window. I make sure that when I launch ProFile, this window opens up. It's the first thing I want to see when I launch ProFile. Okay, I want to see the quick start window. And if you like the idea, notice right at the very bottom of that window, it says show quick start when you start ProFile. And all you have to do is check the box to tell ProFile that yes, indeed, you want to see that window as soon as you launch ProFile. And the other thing, again, talking about personalizing ProFile, there is what I call the jump bar. So you've got all of your icons at the top of the screen, and you've got this area here where you can put any form that you want on the toolbar, okay? So for example, there's a form called the 5-year summary. And I always use the 5-year summary because when I had a tax return or a client that had been with me for quite a few years, I wanted to compare this year's tax return with prior years, kind of see, you know, what's the trend line like? Did I potentially forget something? And just want to make a comparison with prior years. And so when I'm in a tax return, I want to see that 5-year summary. And so again, press F4 to launch Form Explorer, start typing 5-year, and there's my 5-year summary. Okay, so I see very quickly that this particular client had been with me since 2019. I could compare all of the data for those 3 years. Now, I really like the 5-year summary, and the 5-year summary is something that I would consult on a regular basis. So one of the things you could do is you could add it. See your jump bar right over here? I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around. I've got 3 forms on the jump bar right now. I've got the T1, I've got the T1 summary, and the 5 years already there. I've already put it there in a prior demo. But in order to add it to that jump bar, all you have to do is go to the tab for that form that you want to add. So right up here where it says summary, I click on that and hold. Whoops. Oh, that's a tax summary. That's not the one I want. Where's my 5-year? Oh, here it is right here. So I click and hold, and notice how it's very small, but you should see kind of like a little, looks like a piece of paper, an icon for a piece of paper. And you click and hold, and then you just drag it over to the jump bar. Okay, so I'm at the jump bar now. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around, and I let it go, and there's my 5-year summary. I've added it a second time, obviously. And so that's how you could add some of the popular forms that you like to consult onto the jump bar. And I could remove it by right-clicking, okay, on one of the forms, and then select delete that button. Okay, so you could personalize the icon bar. You could even personalize it by clicking on options and going to toolbars and turning off if there's something you don't want to use. So notice you've got 3 different selections here: the audit and review marks, the forms, the jump bar that we were just talking about, and all of these shortcuts. If you don't use those shortcuts, you're not using these icons, well, you could remove them from the icon bar if you want to, okay? So again, just another way for you to personalize ProFile. Let's talk about the auditor. We kind of mentioned it very briefly, but we didn't really get into detail. So let's take a little bit of time to talk about the auditor. So as we already said at the very introduction, there's more than 2,800 diagnostic checks that the auditor will perform, and it's actually divided into 2 different types of auditors. There's the passive auditor and there's the active auditor. So I think that the easiest way to demo this is to actually show it to you in ProFile. So let me show you the passive auditor at work. Okay, so notice all those yellow fields. Okay, all those yellow fields are essentially notices, okay, or notifications or warnings that are telling you, hang on, there's something not right here. Okay, you didn't answer a question maybe, or you filled out something potentially incorrectly. And Profile automatically will highlight any field in yellow that is either an oversight or an error or whatever the case may be. And so that's a passive auditor. We don't have to do anything to get the passive auditor to work. It just works all by itself, okay? And if we go to a T4 entry screen, okay? And if I put in some T4 information, so here I've got some income and I've got some CPP, and let's just change that CPP amount. Let's put in a different number, okay? Some crazy number in this case. As soon as I accept that, there it is. There's the yellow field. This is the passive auditor now warning me that my CPP is probably incorrect, okay? That's what that's telling me is that, well, wait a minute, that CPP, are you sure you put in the right number? And of course, what we want to do is we want to compare it to the T4 to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. And if it is indeed the wrong, that's a bit of a ridiculous number, so let's just change it to a different number. If it is indeed the amount shown on the T4, well, then we have no choice. We have to leave it like that. But it's the auditor warning us that it calculated what the proper CPP should be, and it certainly isn't $299. So once again, that's the passive auditor doing its job, okay? And you'll see that passive auditor throughout the tax return. If we go to the T1 itself, there's going to be yellow fields. So there's this yellow fields, okay? And again, this is just the passive auditor telling us that it looks as though we've got some missing information. And we said there's also the active auditor. So the active auditor is another way of viewing any messages or any potential errors on a tax return. But this time we call up the auditor, and we could do it in one of two different ways. You can click on the little icon right over here where my mouse is pointing at the top of the window. If I click that, I open up the active auditor, and you see at the bottom of my screen, let me expand this. So I've got all kinds of audit messages here, okay? Now, notice that there are different tabs. So I've got the summary tab, I've got the warnings tab, and so on and so forth. There's all these tabs. And the summary tab is essentially all of the audit messages in one location. And what I could do then with this passive auditor is I could click on a audit message. So in this case, I'm going to click on this one, information is incomplete, and it says, please review. I could double click on that, and Profile is going to jump to that part of the tax return. And notice how it's circled that message, right? And it's telling me, wait a minute, you didn't answer this question. And I could click on any one of these, and Profile is going to jump to that area of the tax return, okay? So that's how the passive auditor works. It's more, it's waiting for instruction from you more or less, you know, in the way of how do you want to work with these audit messages? Do you want to review them? Then you can just click them, and it's going to jump to that area, and then you can decide what to do from there. Okay, so that's the active auditor. All right, let's go back to our slide deck, and let's talk about a couple of other things that sound kind of almost a little bit, you know, ridiculous. Even font colors. Why would we talk about font colors? Well, believe it or not, font colors in Profile have a great bearing on how you're working in the software. So let me show you what I mean. So if I look at this tax return, okay, let's go up to the very top. We're at the personal information section of this tax return. Notice what we've got. Notice that the social insurance number and the name of the taxpayer, the font is purple. We've got purple font there. And then I've got some blue font, okay? And then if I keep going, I'm going to eventually see some black font. What does all of that mean? So purple font generally means you carried forward that information from the prior year. So if we're in a 2021 T1. So if I carry forward a tax return from last year to this year, so in other words, I carried forward the 2020 tax return into 2021, then the data that got brought forward is going to show up in purple font. Okay, blue font means that it's come from somewhere else in the tax return. Okay, and notice that if we go to the T1 itself, then we're going to see a lot of blue font. So notice all the amounts here are in blue font, and that means that this information is going to get populated from somewhere else. You don't have to put anything here. That's going to get automatically populated. That's what blue font is for. Okay, and if we go to a T4, for example, notice how the font here is black. Black font means that's for data entry. So whenever I see black font, that means I could put in some information. It's expected that I'm going to put the information in here. Okay, that's what the black font is for. And then if you look at the far right-hand side column, that font is green. Green means one of two things. It means it's a total. So this obviously is the column that even says total. So this is the total of all the other columns. However, it also means that I can't type anything in that field. So if you're working in a green font, okay, or a field with green font, you cannot enter any information in that field. That's automatically generated by ProFile, and it's locked. It's a locked field. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that you notice that there are some drop-down arrows, and some fields will have a little drop-down arrow, and that essentially means it's menu selection. You could go and pick from a drop-down menu. You could pick, in this case, for example, we've got the province. Okay, so that's usually what you're going to see there. And for those blue fonts, so when you see a blue font, okay, you could still type in information where there's a blue field or a blue font in a field, and notice what happens. Two things happen. The font turns red, and there's a little diamond indicator next to the amount. And what does that mean? That means an override. That means you've overridden a profile calculated value, right? And that's what that red font is for. And by the way, if you look down at the auditor, notice there is a tab that says overrides, and I can click in the overrides tab of the auditor and see any and all overrides that I've entered in that tax return. Normally, that's not always the case, but normally it's relatively rare to have an override. You're usually letting ProFile do its thing and calculate certain amounts, or let it populate those fields from information you've entered elsewhere. Sometimes we do override. There are some times where you might override a field, but generally speaking, not really. And so a lot of times what we do with overrides is, for example, you're going to do some what if scenarios, some forecasting. Well, what if the amount would be this rather than that? And you just want to quickly change a value. And then once you've changed it, you want to bring it back to its actual amount. And then what you could do is right click and check or uncheck the override line and bring it back to its actual amount. Or press the F2 key on your keyboard. That's also going to cancel an override. And the last thing to point out when we're talking about font colors and arrows and diamonds and all that stuff is notice some of these fields have an upward pointing arrow. That means it's a jump to. I can actually double click in this field for employment income. If I double click it, I'm going to jump to the originating data. Where did this information come from? I could just double click it and they go back to the T1. And, or I could also right click and open up this window that shows me that this amount came from a T4. Okay, so there's all kinds of inherent data, inherent information that is given to me just by virtue of using or knowing about those font colors and about those drop downs and jump fields and all that stuff. Okay. All right, let's go back to our deck and let's talk about actually preparing a T1 return. We're going to take a break in maybe 10 minutes or so. All right, and just bear with me for the next 10 minutes, then we'll take a little 15-minute break. And so working on a T1, where do we start? What do we need to know? And what do we do in ProFile? So let's talk about some of the key things we need to work on a T1. Now, again, we're all tax professionals here. We know how to work with a T1. We know that we need some supporting documentation like T4s. We need maybe some medical or donation receipts and so on and so forth. Over here, we're also suggesting that it would be a good idea to have maybe a checklist or a questionnaire. It would be a good idea to have an engagement letter. Now, what I wanted to point out is that, first of all, ProFile has an engagement letter available to you. All right, so we're going to talk about this in more detail in our webinar next week, in our experienced user webinar, but I just wanted to point it out here. So if you go back to the options menu and select templates, and when the window opens up, what you're going to see, there's all kinds of available, let's call them letters, okay? One of them being the engagement letter, okay? So we can make use of the engagement letter in ProFile and work with our engagement letter. And we could also make use of other letters that are available to us. So for example, the one that I wanted to point out right now is, let's talk about this engagement letter. Oh, hang on, I think I'm in, no, that's not the one I wanted. I'm sorry. Let me go back over here. So I personalized some letters earlier, and I changed some of the names of these letters. And so that was what I just opened up is for our T2 webinar. So that's not really what I wanted to show you. What I wanted to show you was the client letter, and then I want to show you how you could create your own checklist as well. So here is the client letter. All right, so that ProFile will print. And when you finish the tax return, you could give them a copy of this letter that says, we've worked on your tax return. You're going to get a refund of X dollars, or you owe X dollars, and so on and so forth. Now you could change this letter. Okay. Notice that you've got some black font here. So I could just anywhere start typing. That's what black font is. It's just text. So I could type anything that I want. Okay. And the blue font are fields. They're essentially some fields, some amount, some value that comes from the tax return itself. So for example, I could go back to my T1 for this particular client, right? And I could go and select a certain field. Okay, so right over here, I can just go to one of these fields and I could just right click it and I could say copy the field code. And then I could go back to my letter. I can't remember which letter I was in now, so I may just pretend it's this one. No, that's the wrong one. Let's try the other one. There are too many windows open. And so here's that black font. Here's the data that I just typed. And now I could right click and paste that field. Okay. And so you could copy and paste any value onto the letter, okay? And you could do that with the engagement letter, you could do that with the client letter, and you could also create, let me just close this one down, because I'm getting myself confused. I've got too many letters and too many forms. Let me just close this one too. All right, so let's go back to options, template, and we have user letters, as you could see here, okay? So you could go, now I realize what I was doing wrong. I was in the T2. Again, we have to remember that it's module and year specific. All right, so notice we've got the tabs across the top. I even tripped myself up. I hadn't noticed I was actually on the T2 tab. So let's go back to the T1 tab. That's why I was getting T2 letters and I couldn't figure it out. So there you go. Now we're at the right place. We're at the 2022 T1 tab. I can even click the drop down and select a different module year. But let's pretend we want to get ready for 2022 tax season. So I'm selecting 2022 T1, okay? And I have my client letter that we were talking about. I've got my engagement letter, okay? Let's open it up just to show you, and there it is. And again, I could type anywhere in here. I could just add in some paragraphs, type something in, and then copy a field code from another area of the tax return, okay? That's all you have to do is copy and paste, or you can even drag and drop. You could just drag a field right onto the letter. If you got two monitors, for example, that works really well. And then the last one that I wanted to show you is, let's go back. Okay, let me close this one. Don't get myself confused again. So let's go and show you what we have in addition to those client letters, those engagement letters. You also have something called user letter 1 and user letter 2. Okay, those are free form letters that you could create whatever you want. Okay, so I'm going to open one up, and what you could do here is you could start creating a checklist. You could say dear client, or you could put in the field code for client name. Please provide, and so you just start filling in whatever you want to say. Please provide the following. I'm not going to type it all in. Please provide the following information, and then you could say all P4s, right? And then any investment income. And so you could create a checklist in here, okay? So you can use ProFile to create all the letters that you want, all the forms that you want to send to your client. And let me just close this one, go down. And then you could preview them right inside of ProFile. So again, remember the Form Explorer. So open up the Form Explorer and let's call up user 1, okay? And there's my, let's try it again. User 1, and there's my letter. Now this is kind of small, you can't really see it that well, and so maybe I'd have to adjust the font sizes and all that. But you can see all of the letters. It's just another form in the tax return. And so when you go, remember our famous form selection, okay? When you go to your form selection, then you could scroll down, and when you find user 1 or engagement and all that, make sure that you select that you want to give that to your client as well, okay? And so this is another example of how you can personalize ProFile. Okay, if you don't mind, let's run another couple of minutes and then we'll take a break, maybe at 5 after.
Michael?
Yes.
Can you go back to that user letter thing?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
there's a couple things there.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking, how do you change the order?
You want me to go to the letter itself or to the form selection?
The form.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let me go to form selection.
Yeah.
Yep.
Common question we get is, how do I get the letter to print first?
Right. Okay. You want to explain it?
Yep. So you can put in find form
Mm-hmm.
up at the top.
Yeah.
You can type in user 1 or whatever letter they're using. Letter's fine. Letter's fine.
Okay, whoops, hang on
Oh.
a second.
No. I do that all the time. You hit enter, and I didn't mean enter. I meant scroll
Yeah.
down.
Okay, so if I, yeah,
Type in letter.
yeah,
You see it highlights it down at the bottom, Michael?
yeah, I see it right here.
You can click on that and hold it and scroll it all the way to the top.
All right, so let's demo that. So I'm on it now. I'm holding the mouse, and now I just drag it up, and I can put it where I want. So you might want to, maybe you want that to be the first thing that prints.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to drag it a lot.
Yeah. But you get, I'm sure they understand, you know, they get the gist of this. So essentially we're just dragging it up.
Yeah, keep pushing, pulling it all the way up.
Yeah, we're getting there. There we go. Almost there, almost there. Okay, here we go.
Because this common, you know, a lot of people want to adjust the letter or some wording or add something in it.
Yeah,
And
but
then
it's again, yeah, it's a great point though. You could change the order of these forms.
Yeah, and they say, okay, that's great. Now I got the letter all the way I want it. How do I get it to print first in the print batch?
Yeah.
Which is logical, right? You go, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so, okay, I think, are we at the top? It looks like we're at the top. So
Yeah,
there
I
it
think you're at the
is.
top there. So
now
it'll print in this order. So the letter
Right.
will print first, then the DC 95,
Yeah.
etc. Right. So if you want a certain order, you can just pull them up.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's another, the user letter, do we put a 1 down here where this, I seem to remember that we have to put some kind of a code down here. If we want ProFile to automatically print something, is it a 1 we put in here, Duncan? Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah, you do it in
Is it here
template.
or? Oh, in the template, yes, thank you. Right. Okay, so let's just show, maybe then we'll take a break after that. So let's go back to the template. And for your letter, so if you want user 1 to be automatically selected, it's in print condition, right?
That's where you put the 1, Michael.
And we just put the number 1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there you go. So yeah, because you customized or created a user letter, ProFile, and you want ProFile to automatically select it, then as Duncan mentioned, make sure you've got the number 1 in there and you're telling ProFile to include this in your print batch, and then you're good to go. So I think we've covered that pretty well. And it's just about 5 after 2 p.m. here. So why don't we take a 15-minute break? And we will come back at 20 after. All right, and we'll resume our discussion. So talk to you in about 15 minutes. Thanks very much. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let's get right back into it. We've got a lot of material yet to cover. So let me just go back to our slide deck and a couple of
Hi,
other things
Michael.
I wanted to point out. Hi.
Can you go, we've got questions about how you expand the template window. So maybe just show that again.
Okay, so
Yeah, that window.
to expand it? You mean like just the
yeah,
window
just-
itself?
Yeah, just to pull it,
Like
make
this,
it
you mean?
bigger. Yeah, I think it opens small for some people.
Okay.
So yeah, just like that.
just-
Just like how you can
okay.
pull it. Yeah.
Yeah, just go to the border and click and hold the mouse button and
Yep.
That's it. Okay. And
Yep,
this,
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. No problem. Okay, let's go back to our slide deck, and here we go. So yes, of course, there is an important step as well with a new client, especially, is we want them to sign, or we want them to authorize us. And I know I'm going to show you another slide after this one. But there have been recent changes made to this whole authorize a representative. It used to be a lot easier, even a couple of years ago, where all we had to do is get this client to fill out the authorize a rep signature page. So from ProFile, if we go and open up the Form Explorer and start typing in is it author? I always call it the old way, T1013, but as Duncan pointed out in one of our prior webinars, you're not able to set the T1013 under the form selection to get it to print. So it may be better off to type in the word authorize, or just start typing authorize, and you're going to open up this authorize a representative page. Okay. And all you want to do here is you want to check the box and essentially enable the printing and e-filing of this request. So you want your client to sign this. Now we're just showing one way in which you can get authorized, but it's only a first step. So essentially what we do is we fill out that form, get the client to sign, and once it's signed, we can go up to the e-file menu, and we could then e-file the authorize a representative form. Okay, so you could do that electronically. Now, as many people have pointed out in prior webinars and that we've chatted about a few times, CRA has made some changes to the authorize a rep the process. They essentially want confirmation on behalf of the client that yes, you are indeed authorized. And so as recently as October, they've made more changes. So please, we're not going to get into it here today, but please at least visit the CRA website and learn about all the various options and the various ways in which you can now get authorized. CRA recommends, I think, if I'm not mistaken, CRA, I think, would prefer that all the clients set up an account with CRA under my account and then authorize you themselves. I don't know about you, but I had a whole slew of clients who there was no way they were going to do that, either because it was a little bit above their head, or they just didn't want to have a CRA account. They didn't want anything to do with CRA, some of them. And so I don't know, what your clients are like. Everybody's got different types of clients. So it's a little bit messier now than it used to be. But nonetheless, the point is, yes, you could still e-file that authorize a rep form from ProFile. And then from there, you want to check with CRA to see what the other options are to get fully authorized, because you want to get authorized. You want access to CRA's website for that client, because this is the kind of stuff you're going to see. You could go and see their notice of assessment. You could go and see if there's any amounts due. You could check the client data inquiry to see all kinds of values and balances. You could view tax information slips. You can see a copy of their T4. There's all kinds of stuff that you could get on behalf of your client directly from CRA. You don't have to ask your client for their notice of assessment. There's, you can just get all of that from CRA. And so you want to get authorized as a rep for all of your clients, if possible. Okay. And then, of course, once you've got all that, the actual filling out of the tax return is for, again, we're tax professionals. We've done tax returns. So we know that we essentially only have to go into ProFile. And from there, we could just start, typing in whatever we needed to type in. So we've got the T4 that I think we started on this particular return. So we could start putting in the T4 information. And then from there, we could use the F4 key to open up Form Explorer, go to the T5, maybe they're banking with RBC, and maybe they have some interest from RBC or something, and you want to put that information in. All right, so we just fill out the forms. And as we've already said, everything gets populated. There's that 399 that I just put in. Everything then gets populated onto the T1 jacket itself. Okay. Now, what ends up happening, of course, is, depending on how complex that return is, we're going to have a whole bunch of schedules and forms that we've used to finalize that tax return. And at some point, you're going to want to check your work. Once you're all done, you want to make sure you haven't forgotten anything or made any mistakes on anything. So this is where review marks come in very handy. Whether you're working alone or you're working in a team environment, maybe you're double checking someone else's work. Well, this is where you want to use the review marks, because the review marks are going to allow you to both show that you reviewed the return and approved it, or maybe you've noticed something questionable, an error, or whatever the case may be. So when you're in the tax return, so let's go over to the T4 again. So here I am in the T4, and again, ProFile is warning us here that 299 is not the right amount for CPP based on its own calculations. However, you check the T4 and it's indeed 299 on the T4. So what you want to do is you want to tell ProFile, yes, I've checked that. That's what the T4 says. So we've got to go with it. And so this is where you've got these check marks at the top of on the toolbar right up here. And now you could click one of them. So you select one of them. So I've selected the check mark, and I can now go and put review marks next to these items and say, yes, I've checked all of these. They're all good. And then I could go to the T5 and do the same thing. I double check my work. Notice that we've got other review marks. There are two levels of approval marks, if you will. One of them being the preparer check mark, and the other one being the senior person or the manager, or whatever you want to call them. Okay. And then we've got these other review marks here. We've got one that says, well, I think this is wrong. So you put an X next to it and saying, could you go back and double check that? I'm not sure that that's correct. And of course, we've got another one, which is essentially the question mark that says, I'm not 100% sure about this, but let's review this again, because I'm not saying it's wrong, but it might be wrong. Okay. And so that's how you could work with the review marks in ProFile and either approve or question something. And again, going down to the auditor, notice that, let me just uncheck the review marks, go down to the auditor, and notice we do have sign-offs. So there's a tab on sign-offs. So everything that we've checked will get reviewed, okay, or reviewed, will get indicated on the auditor to show that, yes, you have reviewed these and you've signed off on them, okay? Then we've got another tab for issues, anything that you've questioned or that you've indicated is incorrect, you could go and see those. And so you could see the power of the active auditor, how you could filter those audit messages for exactly what it is that you're looking for. Okay, so the review marks are something that I use all the time. Every tax return, I go back and double check my work. And I use the review marks because you know what ends up happening, right? You're working on a tax return, your phone rings, or I don't know, you've got to rush off to a meeting, and maybe you close the tax return, you come back the next day or whatever, and you can't remember where you left off. Did I review this? And I can't remember. Did I? Didn't I? Well, when you have review marks on each line, applicable line, then at least you know what you've done in that tax return. Okay. Okay, let's go back and review our slide deck. And here we're just reiterating the importance of the active auditor, how to call it up. So press F9 to launch it. Okay, Control F9 you can close it down. And of course, as we already pointed out, you can double click on any audit message and ProFile will jump to that field and will circle that amount, that value, or that potential error, and make it really easy for you to spot whatever it is that you're looking for. Okay. You can, by the way, also personalize the auditor. So again, from the options menu, if you go to the environment submenu, you'll open this window up again and notice that there's an audit tab. And when you go to the audit tab, you can turn off, for example, the passive audit. I don't know, I wouldn't do it personally, but you can. You could turn off the passive auditor. You could tell it to stop circling fields. You could even tell ProFile what the active auditor tabs should be, which ones you want to see. And so you could personalize that, that auditor. And notice that you could even tell ProFile to remove the audit messages when you've signed off on something. So like that incorrect CPP or potentially incorrect CPP, you're essentially telling ProFile here that, listen, yes, the T4 says that amount, I've got to stick with it. So don't warn me about it anymore. I signed off on it. Don't give me an audit message on that one anymore. Okay. And then from there, what we've got is we're ready to now print the return or PDF it, give a copy to our client, get them to sign the form, the T183, that will then allow you to e-file the return. So all you have to do is once you're done with it, go and select file and then print. And the print dialog box will open. Now, in this case, I got all kinds of audit messages here. I'm just going to click OK. And then I could go and print or PDF my tax return for this client. Okay. And then, of course, we want the T183 signed. And once we get the T183 signed, we can go and e-file the tax return. Right now, talking about prior to filing, talking about e-signatures. Recently, within the last year or so, I think it was around last year at this time, or last, that we were now allowed to accept e-signatures. CRA will now recognize e-signatures as being official signatures. And in that case, what we could do is we could use a third-party service like DocuSign or Adobe Sign to collect those e-signatures, track those e-signatures, and integrate e-signatures right into ProFile. And so if you are interested in e-signatures, you would want to look into Adobe Sign or DocuSign And again, just find some efficiencies there when it comes to e-signatures. And by the way, just as an aside, if you are a pro advisor, so you are working with QuickBooks Online accountant, you have benefits under the Pro Advisor program, one of them being a discount on DocuSign. So if you are using QuickBooks Online Accountant, open up your QuickBooks Online Accountant account or website, go to the Pro Advisor menu, and then go and scroll down under the benefits tab, and you'll see that you will have discount available on DocuSign. There are conditions that apply. You want to read up on all those conditions that apply, but nonetheless, it might be something that's attractive to you. So you might want to look at that. Okay. And let's move up. And this is great, but we've already taken our breaks. So let's go to the next window that basically says, did you know? There's a couple of little things we want to point out to you. The first one being, I've never used this service personally. A friend of mine who is a tax practitioner is the one who told me about it actually a couple of years ago, and he still uses it. It's a CRA dedicated telephone service for tax service providers. And it's from what I've been told, it's superior to just calling CRA, their general line. You could get in touch with, from my understanding, maybe a more senior level tax agent and get your questions answered. So this service is dedicated for income tax practitioners. It's something you have to register for. Okay. As a matter of fact, I just got an email last week from CRA asking me if I wanted to sign up for this service. So maybe you've got one too just recently. And so it's there. As I say, I don't have firsthand experience with it, but based on what a colleague of mine told me, he was satisfied with the service. So maybe something you want to look into. A couple of other tips on the profile side of things. There are other ways in which you could personalize profile. Okay. I'm not one of those people, but some people, what they like to do is when they put an amount in, they want to put in like 725, and they want that decimal point to get put in automatically. So what they really mean is $7.25, for example. Okay. So you do have the ability to have a fixed decimal entry. So you could go into, again, the options menu, select environment, and under the edit tab, what you could do is tell profile that just assume that the last two digits, whatever the last two digits are that I type, are decimals. That's where the decimal point starts, before the last two digits. I've never liked working that way. I've known some people who have. Maybe you are one of them, and that's great. And if you want to use a fixed decimal entry, you could do that. Okay. You could also use a timer. If you charge by the hour, you could actually turn on a timer inside a profile, and it's going to keep track of how much time you've worked on a tax return. There's also something called the ditto key, which I'll demo to you, because this is a pretty cool thing. And sure, we could copy and paste, right? I could go in and hit copy, paste, copy, paste. However, there's a shortcut. And what I could do is I could, as soon as I turn on the ditto key, so you have to turn it on, okay? So go to, again, options environment, and then go to the edit tab. So let's make sure that it's turned on in my copy of profile. So go to options, environment, and under the edit tab, here it is right here, ditto key. Okay, notice that it's checked, so I've got it turned on. And what does that do? It's a quick way to copy and paste information. So when you're on a table such as this with multiple columns, I could just click in one of the fields, all right? Hit the ditto key. Now, what's the ditto key? It's that first key to the left of the number 1 on your keyboard. It's what is it called? A tilde or something like that? That little wavy line. So press on that key, go to the next column and just press the key again. And notice how I'm filling in the information, okay? And so rather than doing Control-C or right-click, select the menu and select the menu, with one keystroke, I can copy information across a table, okay, by just pressing that one Ditto key, all right? And the other thing I wanted to show you was, I'm not sure how you work with capitalized words. Some people like to type in their names, for example, all cap. So if we go to the info page, let's just go to the info page. And when we start typing in the taxpayer's name, some people want this to be all caps. And so what you could do is, again, you could go, oops, something happened to my PowerPoint. Hang on a sec. My PowerPoint seems to have moved back. Didn't notice that. Go back. Give me a second, please. Here we are. So what you could do, again, is go to Options Environment, and notice there's a capitalization section that says, I always want to use everything uppercase. Everything I type, I want it to be uppercase, or I just want it to work as a normal keyboard. I'll press Shift on a capital letter, or what I use, smart capitalization. The first letter of every word is going to be capitalized. So again, another way in which you can personalize profile. Okay. All right. Let's move on. I've only got 15 minutes left, because then remember, we're going to talk about the homework assignment for you, and I'm going to let you spend some time on that homework assignment. No, 5 minutes or so. I'll turn my mic off, and then we can come back and discuss it and answer any questions. Okay, so another little tip for you. Remember that when your eyes start getting sore, you could use the zoom icon on your toolbar to zoom in to the tax return. It really fills up your screen, as you could see. And when you're, as I say, at the end of the day, especially, we're getting kind of tired. Nice big font. You don't have to squint anymore. And so remember that you do have that capability to zoom out or zoom in on the tax return. Okay. Another little tip for you is we do have a little slide that talks about the shortcut keys. Just a few of them that I've mentioned in this slide. I just want to show you something in Profile. If you go to the in product help, so hit F1 on your keyboard, okay? So if you hit F1 on your keyboard, I'm just widening this window, and go to the search, okay? Type in shortcut. If you're the kind of person who likes working with shortcuts, then you could see a whole slew of shortcut keys right inside the help window in Profile. Okay, so just press F1 on your keyboard, or click the help menu at the top on the menu bar, and then make sure you click on the search field, and you can see your shortcut keys right there. All right, close that window down. Let's go back to our presentation. And don't forget that there are other webinars that are available. We do these profile webinars once a year. This is the last round of a webinar. We started in November, and then we've done it in December. Now we're doing it one more time in January. But there are other webinars available, so don't forget to have a look at the website, Profile's website, and look and see what's available, what's coming up in terms of additional webinars. Okay. All right. A couple more things, and then, as I said, we'll let you try your hand at profile. And so what about a disposition of a principal residence? As you probably know, CRA not too long ago, a few years ago, changed the whole process with disposition of a principal residence. You now have to disclose if you've sold your home, even if it's your principal residence, you still have to declare it. And so everybody who sold their home, so that's something else to put on a checklist, right? When you ask your clients for their information, that should be one of the questions to add to your checklist. Have you disposed of a home? Did you sell your house last year? And if yes, you've got to give me the details of that sale, because I need to disclose it to Revenue Canada. And so let me show you very quickly how we work with disposition of a principal residence. And so obviously start with profile, go to the info page and scroll down. And here it is right here. Did you dispose of a property or properties, multiple? And click yes. Okay, that's the first step. The next step, use the Form Explorer. Call up the Form Explorer and go and find the Schedule 3. So type in S3, hit enter, and then all you have to do here is scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. And there it is, S3 Principal Residence. Click there and put in the information. So how do you designate? Did you own that property for X number of years and it was your principal residence for the full time? If so, check the first box, okay? And then you go down. I'm going to zoom out because now it's too big for my purposes. So let me just zoom out here. And now I put in unit number, let's pretend it's I don't know, unit 1, put in an address, 1 street number, street name, Main Street, okay? And then just very quickly, just filling this out, put in the name of the city and the postal code. I'm just going to make a postal code. And year of acquisition, let's pretend was 2010, okay? And the proceeds were $699, okay? So there you go. So we put in some basic information. And then what we do is we either go to the T2091 for taxpayers who are still alive or T1255 for deceased taxpayers. So let's use T2091. And we just have to fill in a few little pieces of information. Okay. So how many years are you designating your principal residence? Let's pretend it's 11. Okay. And let's pretend that, oh, what happened there? This didn't work. I'm doing something wrong, I think.
I think you need to go back to the details sheet.
Yeah, did I do something wrong here?
Yeah,
oh, I didn't put in the
enter.
proceeds. Yeah.
Oh, no, I think it did, but it disappeared.
Oh, okay. I'll do that again. There we go. Okay.
I hit enter. Okay.
Enter. Yeah. Should be fine. Let's see.
Okay, what's that warning, Michael? Over the proceeds of disposition.
Is
it checked on info?
I did check. Let's go back and look. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Come on. No, mouse doesn't want to pull up. Here we go. Go up to info. Yeah, I checked it. Okay, so let's see. This is the first time. This has always worked.
There you go.
Easiest. Oh, there it's gone. Isn't that interesting? Oh, okay. Yeah, who knows? It's something it didn't like. Okay, let's try this again. Let's go back to our 2091. And so let's put in number of, there you go. Now it's working. So number of years you've owned it, right? And number of years that you're essentially declaring it as your principal residence. That's all you have to do. If it was a principal residence for all the years that you've owned it, you don't have to do anything other than that. Okay, and so that's how you declare the disposition of a principal residence with CRA. Now, if it wasn't your principal residence, there's more information. You have to fill in some additional lines, and we talk about it in the training guide. So have a look at the little PDF of the training guide that we've supplied to you, and you'll see that there's only a couple of other things you'll have to put in the ACB and all that stuff. Okay, but if it's principal residence, that's all you have to do. Okay, next topic of conversation is coupled returns. So if you're working with a taxpayer who's married or living common law with someone, we just want to show you a few quick tips on how to work with coupled returns. So Duncan actually pointed this out last time, and it's important to know when you're working on a coupled return, ProFile only has one tax file. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So let me start with a brand new tax return. I'm not going to work with this one. I'm just going to close this one down. And I'm just going to create a brand new tax return. Okay, so I'm going to click new. Oh, I'm in T2. Hang on a sec. Let me try that again. File new 2021 T1. Okay. And so let's go up to the top here. I'm just going to put in a fake social insurance number. And then I'm working with a brand new taxpayer. Okay, so a tax client. And there you go. And then we would just put in all this information. And we would check here to say that this person is either living common law or is married. Okay. Now scroll down to the bottom or near the bottom of that info page, and there's the spousal information. All right. And so here I would, of course, put in that person's social insurance number. And let's put in a name. And I'm just going to make up a last name. I'm just going to use Jones. I'm not very imaginative this afternoon. And of course, then we put in like the year, date of birth and all that. So what happens is we've got two taxpayers, we got two individuals, but it's inside of one tax return. So when I click File, Save, ProFile is not going to create two tax files. There's only one tax file for both of these taxpayers because they're coupled, they're joined, they're let's call it what we want, married or living common law. Okay. And so what happens is if I click save, I'm going to create one tax file. Okay. And then what I could do, just click save, and notice it's only one tax file that's being created. I'm going to click save. And then what happens is I can go now. I'm in Marissa's tax return. As you can see, Marissa Moore at the top of the page here. So now I could go to the T4 and put in Marissa's information. Okay, so I could just start typing in. Let's just put in something very quickly, just to show you what I mean. And let's put in a salary. Okay, and so I'm putting the information in for Marissa. Now I want to go over and put in the partners or the spouse's information. So what I could do is I could toggle back and forth. Notice that on the toolbar, I've got the little coupled return icon that is lit up now, as you can see. It's bright now. It was faded out before. Now it's kind of bold. So I could click on that, or all I have to do is click, or not click, but press on the F5 key on my keyboard. And it's saying, do you want to create a new return for the spouse? And I say yes. All right. And there you go. I now have the spouse's return that I could work on. I'm at the T4 page for that particular person. And now I could put in that person's information. Okay. And therefore, by hitting F5, I could toggle back and forth between the two returns. Okay. So the F5 key is what I could use to go back and forth, or this spousal icon right here on the toolbar. I can toggle back and forth from one return to the other. Okay. So if we go back to our presentation, you'll whoops, let me just start it again. You'll see that we've got the same information that we just showed you in profile. This is how you toggle back and forth between those two partners. And of course, there's going to be stuff that profile will automatically do. We're going to show you more of optimization in our next webinar, but I just want to quickly point out that, for example, if you've got investment income that's shared amongst the two spouses, so if I put in RBC, we've got some interest, let's pretend we earn $2,000 of interest, but we want to share it between the two spouses because they each contributed a certain percentage. So we could say 40% was from this taxpayer, being Marissa, 60% came from the spouse, and profile is going to automatically allocate that split. Okay, and so that's just one example of how profile will automatically work with spouses and any kind of coupled return or even family returns with dependents to optimize a tax return. Okay. All right, let's go back to our presentation, and what I wanted to show you is autofill my return, because I'm a big fan. I know that there's limitations. I know that there are issues. Maybe some of you have already experienced some of these issues, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later. But as far as I'm concerned, autofill my return is another not only and not necessarily a time saver, but it's a way to ensure, it's just one tool of many tools available to us to ensure that we're complete in preparing a tax return. Okay, it's just another way to make sure we haven't forgotten anything. I think that's why I liked autofill my return, because I don't know about you, but I don't know how many times it's happened to me that a client would say, yep, here's all my slips, and they forget to give you one. They've lost one, or that whatever. They just didn't give you a certain slip. It could be income, it could be a deduction, who knows what it is. They just forgot to give you something. And of course, on the income side, that could be very onerous because the penalties could be very severe. CRA, might levy some very severe penalties from declared income. And so you want to make sure that you've got maybe that side of it covered. And that's oftentimes where autofill my return comes in handy. So what does it do? It automatically populates a tax return. Instead of you typing in all the values, all the amounts off of all of these potential slips that you see here, starting with T3, look at all the slips that autofill my return could populate for me. And all of this other information, including RSP information, home buyers plan repayment amounts, and all this other stuff, and non-capital losses, and all of these other pieces of information that we could just get directly from CRA and have CRA populate my tax return. So how does it work? First of all, you need to be authorized as a representative. So you want your client to sign or submit that authorization request, okay? And once you've got that done, all you have to do is from inside profile, click file, autofill my return. Okay, now I can only show you this in the presentation slides, like obviously can't demo this live. But nonetheless, all we have to do is select autofill my return. This window is going to open up, and then we're going to select launch CRA website. And from here, we log into CRA's website with our credentials. And then CRA is going to confirm the social insurance number or numbers of the tax returns. If it's spousal, coupled return, you can you can fill both at the same time. And then you click next. And then once the connection has been established, you'll see this window. You could then close that window down, and you're going to get to this page, data import worksheet. And this is all the information that CRA has for the client, and I could just import all of this into ProFile. Now notice something very important is that for each of these I've got 3 T4s here, okay? So each of these T4s could be in its own column. So let me show you what I mean here. This is important. So if I go to the T4, I have these columns. Now, if I already have, let's say I have, I think one of them said City of Ottawa. So if I already have a column here that says Ottawa, but I haven't filled anything out yet, okay? What happens is that from autofill, ProFile is going to say, okay, well, you've got, $53 of T4 income from the City of Ottawa. Do you want to add a new column, or do you want to replace the existing column that already says Ottawa? All right, so you got to watch for that, because remember, when you carry forward from a prior year's return, oftentimes the slip descriptions get carried forward. Okay, and if the slip description gets carried forward, and then you do an autofill, you risk having that employer get filled on the next column, and then this column stays blank, and it's going to trigger an error message. Okay, so in this case, then what I would do is I would say, no, replace the existing column. I don't want to see an empty column, so replace anything that's there. Okay, and then ProFile is going to populate all that information. You could view the data import summary, so you could see everything that's been brought in. Okay, and that's how autofill works. Now, a few key considerations when it comes to autofill. Yes, it'll save time. Yes, it'll ensure completeness. It's great for double checking your client's source document. So in other words, I don't use this as a replacement. I don't tell my client, oh, I don't need your slip. I still want my client to give me the slips, because that way I could compare them and make sure that one doesn't have what the other one doesn't have. Or if CRA has something that the client doesn't have, then I could double check and say, hey, did you also work at ABC company? Because I've seen, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot to give you a T4 for that. So you could double check. So point 3 is a very valid one, and not a substitute for your client slips. No, it's not 100% accurate. Okay, you might end up with some duplicate data, especially if you've already started filling in the return yourself, and then you do an autofill. Then you end up with duplicate data potentially. So don't fill anything in until you do the autofill. Okay. And the only thing that you really, as far as major warnings about some, let's call it deficiencies or weaknesses, maybe in the technology, T3s sometimes don't get imported properly, and T5008s also don't get fully filled out, because oftentimes there's 0 ACV. All right, so you've got proceeds from the disposition of some stock security or whatever, and so you've got $5,000 proceeds, 0 ACV, so you got a $5,000 capital gain. So you have to watch for those kind of things. Okay, and there you have it. We're done with the instructional side of our webinar. I am going to let you have a look at that first scenario. So you've got a handbook that we provided to you, and I know that Miriam has indicated the link in the chat window. So if you want to try it, if you want to try completing that the very first scenario, have a look at it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shut down my microphone for 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. And then I'll come back, I'll open up the Q&A window, and we could talk about the T1 scenario that we're asking you to work on if you feel like it. Or we'll also open up that Q&A window, and maybe I could answer some questions. And that's how we're going to wrap things up for the next 20 minutes or so. And I want to leave just some time for Miriam at the very end of our webinar to say a few final words. All right. So I am going to, as I say, I'm going to just mute myself for 5 minutes and I'll be back. All right. I'm just looking at some of the questions, and I see that someone is saying, where do I find the workbook to do the homework? If you look at the chat panel, let me just open up the chat panel. Yeah, you'll see that in the chat panel, Miriam has put some links allowing you to download the training guide, that workbook to try the homework, and you could try it, you know, offline. You could try it on your own after we wrap up our webinar today. But a good idea would be to go and check that chat panel and have a look at the links that Miriam has placed inside that window. Let me just see if there's any other questions that are coming in. It looks as though, boy, the team has been, thank you again. Julie and Duncan have answered a whole slew of questions. So thank you for that, guys. I really appreciate it. And just waiting to see if there's anything else that is going to come in. It looks as though so far we're up to date on the questions. So we'll wait a couple of more minutes and see if there are any other questions that come in. If not, we may wrap. Well, it's already 1:15, so at least here in the eastern part of the country. And maybe we'll wrap up 5 minutes, 10 minutes early or something like that. But let's see, let's give it another minute or two and see if there are any other questions that come in. Okay, I see a question about, there's been a lot of questions about a recording. And yes, you will be getting, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Miriam or Duncan or Julie, I understand that you will be getting a link to a recording so you could view or listen to the webinar again. Navneet is asking about a T1 adjustment. Come back next week, Navneet. We're going to show you exactly that, how to use some of the ProFile's automation tools, I'm saying it the French way, automation tools on filling out a T1 adjustment. So we'll show you that next week if you want to come back. Yeah, great. Yeah, see you next week. Yeah, I think we're pretty well wrapping things up. I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's wait. I hate to cut off as maybe somebody's in the midst of typing a question as I'm about to end thing. And I'm seeing a comment about an installation working. I guess it must have been from a prior question. So I'll leave that one alone for now. And yeah, I think we're just about ready to wrap things up. So Miriam, if you're able to, maybe if you want to say a few final words, and I will, before I let you use your microphone, I'll just say thank you one and all for being here today. Thank you for your interest, your participation, and all the best to each and every one of you. And maybe we'll talk next week. And so I'll sign off and I'll let Miriam wrap things up.
Thank you, Mike. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're glad you could be with us today. I just wanted to mention 2 or 3 things. One is that I just wanted to call out that the CRA has announced that the e-file open date is February 20th. So keep that in mind. Point 2, You can register for our upcoming profile training tours on the ProFile website. I also included a link in the chat. We have about 4 more tours happening in January for T1 and T2 experienced users. And my last point, I just wanted to reiterate that we will be sending out emails with the CPD credits and with a recording of the video, which can be found on our YouTube link as well. And expect about a week to receive that. So thank you for joining us again, and I hope we'll see you at one of our future webinars.